Hi, my name is Maddie Michaud, and I did my research paper on tailing dam failures on transboundary rivers between Alaska and Canada. The Mount First I'll talk about the Mount Polley mine. Mount Polley mine was an open pit gold and copper mine built in the Caribou region of British Columbia. The mine had been running very well and was being very profitable until August of 2014, when the tailing dam had a partial breach that released approximately 25 million meters cubed of tailing into neighboring bodies of water and caused extensive erosion in the surrounding area. Tailings are essentially just a swirl of like hard minerals and water and just leftover stuff that's kind of thrown away after they do these open pit mining practices. And what caused this erosion was that giant sweep of slurry that also ripped up several trees, several, like 1,000 trees, and deposited them into bodies of water. Because of this, the drinking water in the region became polluted and residents were told not to drink it. Residents were also informed that that swimming in the water was at one's own risk and that they really shouldn't even touch it. Studies found that the fish living and spawning in the impacted lakes and streams had higher levels of copper and selenium in their system. The selenium was found in the liver and gonads of the fish, but it was concluded that the organs did make the fish safe to eat. A lot of people still didn't trust the fish, especially the indigenous people of the area, who rely very, very heavily on salmon they rely very heavily on salmon for most of their food. Researchers also found that high levels of copper in the water were found to cause serious developmental problems in the juvenile salmon. Pretty much, this means that they had a lower fecundity and they were not able to reproduce as much as they were before. So here is just a quick map of the affected area. On the top right, you can see the little red dot shows you pretty much where the Caribou region is. And then this larger picture to the left is a picture of the debris field and the 3 lakes that were heavily impacted. Hazeltine Creek and the Kesnel Creek are the 2 main places for coho salmon, and that's where most of the fish samples were taken for those previous studies I just talked about. So what is my question? My question is, if a disaster like the Mount Polley failure occurred on a Canadian transboundary river, how would this impact the salmon harvest of Alaska? More specifically, what political effect could this have on the relationship between the US, mainly Alaska, and Canada? And lastly, is it worth it to build another mine when considering the potential risks posed to the environment? So my methods. I will study this question by looking at a proposed mine that is potentially to be built on a transboundary river, known as the KSM mine. Specifically, I will be reviewing the current environmental and economic reports to determine the risks this poses to the watersheds here in Alaska. Then I will take a look at 2 of the major treaties in the U.S. and Canada that the U.S. and Canada have with each other, and how a breach could impact political relations. So first, some quick background. What is a transboundary river? Well, a transboundary river is defined as the waters from main shore to main shore of the lakes and rivers and connecting waterways, or the portion thereof, along with the international boundary between the United States and the Dominion of Canada passes, including all bays, arms, and inlets thereof, but not including tributary waters which in their natural channels would flow into such lakes, rivers, and waterways, or waters flowing from such lakes, rivers, and waterways, or the waters of rivers flowing across the boundary. Pretty much to sum that up, it's bodies of water that cross a boundary. Transboundary rivers such as the Unuk and Taku River host large amounts of salmon spawning that is important both for the fishing industry in Canada as well as the fishing industry in Alaska. And, yeah. International Boundary Treaty. It was enacted to share the resources provided by the river. I mean, long ago there was a dispute about who gets to use the resources of these rivers, considering they do pass between two countries. So they created this treaty, which consists of 14 articles that deal with several different issues the U.S. and Canada were having at the time. Article 3 creates something called the Joint Commission, and Article 5 states that 3 Americans and 3 Canadians are to be in charge of it, to make it fair. But the most important article is Article 4, which states that there is to be no polluting on one side of the transboundary water that could cause harm to either the health or property of the other side. Then we have the Pacific Salmon Treaty, mainly just regulates the salmon harvesting in both countries, and it's created to help conserve salmon populations for many years. It's to help keep the fishing industry sustainable on both sides. How will I analyze this? I'll first look at the proposed KSM mine. Specifically, I will look at the risks of the tailing dam on the environment. And then when it comes to economics, I'll be looking at the mine as a whole, because the tailing dam itself does not generate money. It's more just a facility that's a risk. And then I'll be comparing risks to the impacts it could have between the two countries. So the KSM mine will possibly become the largest open pit mine in North America. It's to be built near the Unuk River, which is a transboundary river that flows out next to Southeast Alaska. An important thing is the facility of the mine itself is being built near the Unuk River, while its tailing dam is technically being built next to the Nass River, which is not a transboundary river. But the Nass River and the Unuk River are very, very close. And it's suspected that if a breach were to occur, that it would overfill the Nass River and would seep into the Unuk River. This mine has already obtained environmental approval from both the federal and province level. It is unknown if it has a significant backer. It's kind of hard to find this kind of information, because this mining company is very secretive about their finances and all that kind of stuff. So it is, as of right now, is unknown if there's a significant backer. Here's a map of the proposed KSM mine area. As you can see, it's very, very close to to Southeast Alaska, and I believe it's only about 22 miles from the Alaska-Canadian border. So, case analysis. The economic benefits. I will put a little disclaimer here that most of the only economic benefits I could really find came from the mining company's the mine's owner, Seabridge Gold. So these might be a little bit biased or inflated. The building of this mine would create a lot of jobs, not just mining jobs. It's estimated that they will create about 15.5 thousand direct and indirect jobs in Canada alone. This is because you have to essentially build a small town around a mine, and especially because this mine is so remote and up on a glacier, that's going to be a very, very important place, because they need to be able to house all of the people who are going to work at the mine. So there'll be like construction jobs, housing jobs, all that kind of stuff. It's also predicted that it'll create a large amount of gross domestic product for Canada. This will help overall stimulate the economy and pull more raw materials out of the ground that can be used. Case analysis. Environmental risks. Since gold and copper prices are not very high right now, there's a chance that the mine could go bankrupt. Bankrupt mines aren't able to care for their facilities because, well, they don't have the money to, and these facilities tend to decay and cause environmental problems all their own. An example would be a tailing dam. these tailing dams store large amounts of this mining waste, and it's hard to just remove it, especially when the mine is placed on a very remote area. So mining companies have to continue taking care of the dam, but if they don't have the money, they're just probably going to leave it be, and then there's potential that the walls can crack, or overall would cause a breach, and that would just create a huge environmental disaster. There's a thought that the tailing facility will not be able to handle the 15 million gallons of waste a year that is proposed to. This is because the largest tailing dam in North America can only process about 2.7 million gallons per year. That's a huge jump. And because this tailing facility is going to be so large and contains so much of the mining waste, there is a concern that if it were to breach, that huge amount of waste will overflow out of the Nass River and make its way into the Unuk River, which will cause a lot of problems, considering it is an important river for salmon spawning, and it also flows into Alaska's salmon habitat as well.